Bring this meeting of the Simsbury Planning Commission to order. The date is Tuesday, November 28th, 2017. If you'd all rise and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and if SCTV is listening, thank you for recording this meeting. I'll now take the roll call. Holly Bem.
Here.
Robert Kulikowski.
Present.
Aaron Levitt-Smith.
Here.
Ron Lacandro, absent. Alan Needham.
Here.
William Rice, present. Elizabeth Burt is excused. Mark Drake, absent. And Gary Lungarini, absent. Okay, so we have 5 regular commission members here. That fulfills the requirement for our quorum. Mr. Kulikowski, I understand this is your last meeting.
Yes, it is.
Is it?
Okay,
It is.
so I regret to see you go, but how about taking us through the minutes from last meeting?
All right, so we'll look at the minutes from the regular meeting, Tuesday, October 24th, 2017. Any changes on page 1? Page 2. Page 3. I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved. I second.
Hearing motion, any comment? All in favor of accepting the minutes? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
Done an exemplary job. I'm going to miss you. Okay, next order of business is old business. We have no public hearings outstanding, no applications, so old business is nothing to take care of there. New business, no new applications. However, we do have a couple of referrals. The first one is a CGS 8-24 referral from the Board of Selectmen on proposed basketball courts at Simsbury Farms on the property located at 100 Old Farms Road, zoned R40.
Mr. Chairman, Jerry Toner is here to explain the 8-24 referral with regards to improvements at Simsbury Farms.
Okay? If you could do that, Jerry, it'd be great.
Thank you very much for taking the time to address this project. As you know, the application, just for some background on this, the Simsbury Farms complex was built and opened to the public in 1972. And in about 1998, a committee was formed to look at the operations of the farms and really to look at the next 25 years of Simsbury Farms. And obviously the farms has been a vital part of this town, really the cornerstone of what we do. But at the same time, there were things that were starting to meet their life expectancy, and the infrastructure and some of the different parts of the facility really needed to be addressed. And at the time, a committee was formed. It's called the Simsbury Farms Complex Committee. They were a subcommittee of the Park and Rec Commission. And their first task was to retain a consulting firm to come in and put together a master plan. The firm of Castle Booth was retained. And they came in and probably over the period of about 6 to 9 months, they held a number of public hearings, met with staff, did a lot of legwork, and really looked at the facility and again, trying to project out what the next 25 years we're going to need. Out of that, in November of 1999, that master plan was completed. And since that time, a number of major projects have been completed that were identified in the plan. The first one was the reconstruction of the ice rink with a cover over it. The second was the reconstruction of the Golf Pro Shop and Restaurant. Next was a new golf and park maintenance facility, which was constructed off of Hopbrook Road. There have been other, and then the biggest one, I should say, the biggest project was the reconstruction of the main building at Simsbury Farms, which was completed 5 years ago. There have been some other, I would say, not minor, but other repair work. We're undergoing a renovation right now of the pools at Simsbury Farms. We've had the upper 4 tennis courts reconstructed probably 3 times since the original construction in 1972. But getting to where we are now, the one project that was identified during that master plan process through the input of the public and through actually the Park and Rec Commission was to build 2 basketball courts up there. And the location that was identified was an area that, if you remember the original construction, there were actually 2 lower tennis courts down below what is now the playscape. And if you go up there now, you can see the light poles are still there. But in the late 80s, tennis had pretty much, had really turned. There was not the play or the demand that there had been. The courts were in disrepair. We're going to require pretty major expense to repair them. And at that time, the selectmen decided, after a lot of deliberation, that they were not going to go that route. They would be left, and with the understanding, if the demand ever came back, they could be certainly put back into operation. But that has not happened. But anyway, through the master planning process, the basketball courts were identified as a priority. And now, 18 years later, it's really the one project that has been left not completed. And so the Park and Rec Commission, as well as the Friends of Simsbury Farms, which is a new 501c3 that was formed to try and help generate donations for improvements of the farms, both identified this and have revisited the plan and said, I think, feel strongly that this at some point should be completed. And we've also had, honestly, discussions with regarding donations towards it that are not confirmed yet. We hope they may happen, but concurrent with those efforts to try and get the funds in place, I'm going through the process of getting the Land Use Commission approvals. And, started the Board of Selectmen for their direction, and obviously they sent me here for the 8-24 approval. And pending that approval, it will go next to the Conservation Commission and to zoning for a site plan amendment. So I did actually made a copy of the page from the master plan that shows you right where the courts were proposed and still are proposed. So basically, we feel that this will be just as we did 18 years ago when the master plan was put together, that this will be from a programming standpoint, from a public use standpoint, really a great addition to the farms. And we hope that, it can happen. I think, again, we've had some interest, and we've had some folks that have really, stepped up and expressed an interest in making it happen. So we're hopeful it may get done. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
Jerry, on the page you just gave us, it looked like there's going to be a new parking lot, so they'll extend the parking lot out?
There was talk about an auxiliary parking lot, Aaron, and I don't know that it's really practical because of the topography, especially up there. I mean, I think sometimes it's easier to put those things on paper, and I think there were areas that it would have been nice. I don't know that for one, I think we've actually were in fairly good shape from a parking standpoint. In the summer, even when the pools are open to the public and, we have the tennis courts open, never had a problem. We actually have a lower area as you come up the driveway on that right-hand side in the grass area. We have kind of an overflow parking area, which seems to work well when we need it. I don't know that we need any more paved parking up there. That's never really come up beyond the conceptual, discussion. So I think from a parking standpoint, we're in
So we'll just be putting in the courts, not the,
Yeah.
okay. Because I know on nights where they do tennis, it's packed.
Yes.
So if they were playing basketball too, then people would have to go into the, but I think it would be few times, like you said, that
Yeah.
parking is, but
Yeah.
it could be.
We would also, and the other thing I should mention too, is that we have retained a firm to do Mylona McBroom, who has worked on a number of projects with us, is doing the survey work, putting together the preliminary design so that we can go to, take it to conservation. And one of the things I should mention is this will be wheelchair and handicapped accessible. There will be a crosswalk at the lower parking lot with a path that will walk, actually, if you can picture that swings, those swings that are down in that lower area will go across the front of there, right to the court. So it will be wheelchair accessible as well.
Okay, Commissioners, as usual, I'll remind you that our responsibility is to assess the referral in comparison to the Plan of Conservation and Development
The new shiny one.
and the new shiny one. Now, Jamie, we don't have
That's right.
hard copies available at this time?
Correct.
Okay. So I have one of the drafts. And, yeah, going through that, I think it's pretty clear that this project is right in the wheelhouse of a couple of the chapters of the new POCD. Specifically, Section 7, and I love it because now we can talk about which sections and which paragraphs. Section 7, which is entitled Maintain and Enhance Community Character. Where in there, it's explicitly stated that community amenities are a priority. And it's a picture of the pools at Simsbury Farms, okay? Also, in Section 12.2.B1,
Wow.
I don't know,
He's showing off.
He's enjoying
That's
himself.
because
He's
he's got the
showing
only copy.
I don't know,
I brought one, I brought one.
I don't know if it's gonna line up with the actual,
There's something about recreation, too.
Yeah, there is. That's where I was gonna go.
12.2.1.
Yeah, that's page 102 on my
I
draft.
have it in 104, and it talks about providing recreation facility to meet community needs. And I think you hit on the fact that the popularity of basketball is probably a little higher now than maybe it was 10 or 18 years ago. So I do not doubt that there's any lack of need for the two new courts.
Right.
Yeah.
And you said they're going to be accessible too, is that what?
They will.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, that is.
This
And
one's
this is a
easy.
nice location, because what are you gonna put there? You know, I mean, it's not like it's not out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
Okay?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move we make a positive referral.
Okay, can you, let's expand it a little bit, please, Holly? You want me to help you out? or-
Oh, wait,
Do you have a draft motion?
But, Mr. Chairman, just for clarity, as you mentioned with regards to 8-24, it would be a motion to find that the proposed improvements at Simsbury Farms is consistent with the 2017 POCD. It could be as simple as that, or as you mentioned, you could state some consistencies that you pointed out within the plan.
Okay, so I would say I propose a motion that, I'd like to make a motion that the proposed development at Simsbury Farms is consistent with the newly adopted 2017 Plan of Conservation and Development.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
After you, who can top that?
Seeing no further discussion, we'll put up to a vote. All in favor of the positive referral, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Great.
Thank you
When do
very
they
much.
think when do you think you'll put it in, for next year? I'm just
Well,
curious.
a lot of it depends on the funding,
Right.
securing the funding. We'd like to see it, if construction could begin 2018,
Yeah.
that would be great.
That'd be great.
I think that would be our goal, but a lot of things need
Yeah,
to
that's it.
take place. So, anyway, thank you all very
Thanks,
much.
Good seeing you, Jerry.
This works out pretty good, huh?
Have a good
So far,
holiday.
so good.
Good.
All right, next item. We have another referral. CGS 8-3A, referral from the zoning commission for zoning commission application number 17-56 of Marshall Epstein, or Epstein, I apologize if I'm, Epstein?
Epstein.
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 Okay. Rosedale Farms and TJ Donahue Esquire, applicants for a text amendment to the definition of the Town of Simsbury zoning regulations regarding accessory activities in support of agricultural operations, include the baking of specialty breads and pies.
To include, I assume.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it looks like a,
All right, so the proposed text
Which I
is included with our package.
didn't
It
see.
was on the back of the,
Yeah, that's right here.
back of the application.
Thank you.
Now, is there anyone here who wants to speak on this subject or represent the applicant?
Didn't we talk about this once before?
We did.
We did.
Yeah.
Not quite this specific, it was more of a text amendment to allow, if I remember correctly.
Commercial kitchen.
Commercial kitchen and
Okay.
parties and weddings and right?
Yep.
Was the, but it, yeah.
So here we're talking about a change in a definition. And again, I'll remind everyone that we have to do this, through the lens of the POCD. So the existing text is agricultural operations, colon. So this is the definition. Operations and activities located on land defined as a farm under these zoning regulations whose annual gross sales from agricultural products during the preceding calendar year were $1,000 or more. So the text amendment includes an addition, and it says, permitted accessory activities in support of agricultural operations, including the baking of specialty breads and pies, where the farm is over 25 acres, and the preparation and baking area is less than 400 square feet.
So what section?
So, any farm,
7.3, we clearly say we want to preserve,
What's it say, Holly?
agriculture.
work with local farmers and others to clarify specific mechanisms to preserve agricultural lands and, support the preservation of working farms and the availability of farmland soils.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, can I just give you the hierarchy?
Yeah,
within
please
the
do.
zoning Regulations?
Yep.
So what they're proposing, as you mentioned, is a change to the definition of agricultural operation. So agricultural operations are associated with farms. So in the town's zoning regulations, farms are, let me just go back one. Farms are defined as a tract of land containing 5 acres or more, used in part or wholly for agricultural purposes, including fur ranching, pig farming, slaughterhouses, and, excluding fur ranching, pig farming, slaughterhouses, and fertilizer manufacturing. A farm may include premises used for the keeping of livestock and other domestic animals when permitted by these regulations. So in essence, you need a farm. A farm is in essence defined as something that's used for agricultural purposes on more than 5 acres, and it is a permitted use as of right within any residential zone.
so you can have a farm anywhere.
You can have a farm so long as you have 5 acres.
And
Okay.
you meet the requirements.
So a field could be considered a farm if you grew alfalfa or timothy or just hay or feed.
And then on that field of alfalfa, you could add a small bakery and sell breads and cakes and things.
That would be a conservative interpretation of the regulations.
If adopted.
If adopted.
If adopted.
Right, that's.
So, they're being very specific here, over 25 acres, with preparation and baking less than 400 square feet.
Right. And
Over
this,
25
it takes that 5 to 25.
Right.
It just says you need 25 acres.
Right.
For this.
So you need
this.
25 acres in farmland production.
Right. So, quite frankly, who's that shut out? Is this shutting anybody out from this if we adopt this? I have a problem with the text amendments anyway.
You go back to hierarchy.
Yeah.
Take all the residential zones.
Yep.
Farming's allowed. Under our regulations, a farm is considered 5 acres or more.
Right.
It could be a fenced-in area with a horse. It could be a fenced-in area with a cow. It could be a fenced-in area with a sheep. That's the minimum definition of a farm.
Right.
They're adding the additional language of 25 acres, but there's no asterisk on the 25 acres. So what's unclear to me is if it's a 50-acre tract of land with 5 acres in agriculture, or can you have a bakery
Off of the 5 acres,
on that tract of land?
yeah, and anywhere on the
On the
50.
tract.
Because it qualifies as a farm, it has the minimum acreage. So there's, and I've had discussion with their council that there, in my view, should be a correlation between the farming activity and the potential expansion of a commercial activity that is accessory to the farm. And the key is under our definition of farm, it could be a hayfield.
You know,
It could be a horse farm that now potentially could
Christmas
have
tree
a
farm.
commercial bakery.
Yeah, that's,
You know, the problem I see with a lot of this is that we want to encourage farming. It's always been my knee-jerk reaction to say, wow, whatever can help sustain them, because I realize you're operating on razor-thin margins. And I agree with Robert, when people come with text amendments, they're not thinking about all of the ramifications. So I always feel bad when they come with something that's poorly defined, because we're going to, we can't really accept this, because you're right, anything that's calls itself a farm, including that little patch of land near me that has just is used for hay, could conceivably put a commercial bakery in a residential section. And yet there are circumstances that if we had the right thought processes to really delineate and put conditions on it, we might want to encourage operations that would allow small farms that couldn't have their own bakery contribute their regional or Connecticut Valley produce, so that there is a bakery associated with a farm that does that under the right conditions, but not with this one sentence, doesn't capture.
And I think, if I may expand upon what Holly said, I think the intent of the reg is in essence to have a farm that has production associated with vegetables and or orchard-type fruit. So there's a few more boxes you check. If you are a farm, 5 acres or more, that you're a farm. But in this reg, you need 25 acres or more. Maybe it needs the terminology 25 acres or more in active production of associated with the growing of vegetables and or orchard or fruit products, because then you can really make the connection between this is accessory to the farm. Because if you have we use the example of a hayfield, if you have just a hayfield and it's permitted use as of right, and all of a sudden a bakery's there, is the primary use of that property of the farm or the bakery?
Right.
So the terminology is that it should be subordinate to the operation of the farm. So they have, I want to say, most of the language. They probably just need a few more sentences or a few more. Remember, it's permitted use as of right. This isn't a special exception. So the zoning commission doesn't get to say it's okay here, but not okay there because of the impact to the neighborhood. If it were adopted, it's okay as of right, so long as you have the minimum acreage required. It doesn't talk about the utilization of that property you know, you say, you know, would a horse farm have a bakery?
Right.
Would a,
Doesn't sound that
No,
appealing
no,
to
a
me.
wheat farm would have a bakery.
maybe,
But it doesn't say
but they
that.
could bake bread, but they wouldn't be able to bake pies because they don't have the filling for the pies. So
if
what
you're
it,
selling
what, you
your
know, it's chicken,
produce.
egg, but,
If you were selling your produce on site and wanted to add the addition of fresh baked stuff,
correct.
okay, that to me is, I like that word subordinate. That to me is subordinate to your main activity.
Right.
So that one word subordinate is something I think that's important.
Well, and Rosedale already does sell baked goods, so when I read this, I thought, oh my goodness, they probably are looking to improve their margins with vertical integration, because God knows I buy a whole lot of their baked goods, but they have to buy them from someone else and sell them there. When I was looking at our brand-new POCD, I saw that we had a section in red that says, create an agricultural subcommittee to create a plan for farm preservation. Well, maybe this would be a task to talk to the subcommittee about how do we come up with some better wording or some better definitions to help our farmers so these ad hoc submissions have a chance of getting a broader look and more in-depth. I mean, I see that that's something that we want to do so that even if this is not a proper text, we can commit ourselves to doing something to help our farmers.
Well, why don't we start with the text amendment?
So again,
So
so
can I?
one of the
well-
mindsets may be that the POCD is in support of activities associated with the preservation of farms, which means financially viable farms. In order to be financially viable, you need to offer some diversification. How do we allow a farm to diversify, but have those activities, which are considered a diversification of the activity, or non-traditional? A bakery would kind of maybe be at a commercial scale, non-traditional. Still be accessory, back to Alan's thought, that if it's subordinate. So the language and, we'll say, the philosophical issue, I don't think the POCD disagrees with.
Right.
It's just, as Holly said, it's, you know, if someone writes a specific piece of language for a zoning code that is applied to the entire town, but they're writing it specific to a property. So how do you make it, we'll say, general enough, but without the potential for abuse by someone
Exactly.
10 years from now who says, I don't have to open a bakery in a commercial zone. All they have to do is find someone with enough land in a residential zone, and I can open my bakery there. I can go to the zoning enforcement officer and ask for a permit. It wouldn't even go to the zoning commission.
Well,
So
let's
Jamie,
read.
what can, because I agree, I like the idea that they would be able to do this if it was in connection. So what do we need to do to encourage? I mean, can we send this back and say, first of all, this is not the first time they've come before us, and there's not been anybody here to answer questions or explain. So that's, you know, it would have been helpful had somebody been here to be able to answer questions again, because I think the last time
Yeah.
we did the text amendment, there was no one here to answer questions. But, because I don't disagree with what they're trying to do. It's just way too vague and open for interpretation, and I agree. I don't want somebody.
Can't we
wouldn't wanna
just
try
ask
to-
him to resubmit?
Well, that's what I'm asking,
With our
because
concerns in
that's what
mind?
I'm thinking. Can he
I think-
resubmit?
This is
You
a
really
referral.
have 3 courses of
Oh.
action. Maybe even 4. You always can table it. The zoning commission has a public hearing scheduled for January 8th. You meet after that, but they could keep that hearing open so that you would have adequate time to respond. Prior to the public hearing, they can amend their application. They can always, in essence, make it more restrictive, and you won't violate the public hearing notice. You know, if they proposed 25, you couldn't go to the hearing and someone suggested to make it 5, back to 5, or have no restriction, because that would be less restrictive, and you would run amok of your public hearing notice. So you could potentially table it. You could find that it's inconsistent with the POCD. You could find that it's consistent in principle with the following 1, 2, 3, 4 potential revisions or suggestions to make it clear that the proposed activity is subordinate to the farm. In the worst case scenario, Rosedale stops growing corn, stops growing vegetables, stops picking peaches, the bakery's still there, and they meet the acreage requirements. The farm stand's still there, the bakery's still there. Does the farm, in a traditional sense, still need to be there?
What was the fourth option?
The fourth option is a table, act favorably. Maybe that's the 3.
Oh, okay.
Well, you know,
I-
to Bob's point,
The fourth would be to invite the applicant back to your next meeting to have a discussion. But
Yeah, I personally would, I'd go with, say it's consistent with, and then outline how it would fit more with, that would be what I would do, but.
And Aaron, but that gets us back to Bob's point, we're making ad hoc, on-the-fly changes to our zoning regulations, or suggesting it, we can't make those changes. I mean, I'm even concerned about the 25 acres. Is that good or is that bad? Do we flip a coin? I mean, it seems to me sitting down here and editing what we think is a good idea could lead to unintended consequences because we're doing it on the fly.
Well, text
agree with
amendments
that.
are always dangerous things.
Yep, text,
Yeah, they are.
very dangerous.
I agree.
All we're asked here is to consider this text amendment. And what I hear is that the notion is not unappealing.
Correct,
It's just some of the details.
correct.
And what I'm concerned with, and I think what you're saying, Aaron, is that in future, while this may appear to be consistent with the POCD, it may be inconsistent if somebody closes the farm and just keeps the bakery.
And you
Okay.
wouldn't know that.
Right.
So
No.
quite
Correct.
frankly, that puts us back to text amendment this broad is
Yeah, exactly.
not a good idea.
Jamie, do I have the opportunity or option to recognize a member of the public in this discussion?
You can always accept public testimony, but it's not a public hearing. You do always run the chance of someone considering the fact that you held a hearing without proper notice. So again, if you do that, I would caution you on how you do that. I think it may be pertinent potentially if, given the discussion, to allow the applicant potentially, staff can always reach out to the applicant, explain the discussion that was held at the planning commission. And again, I think on the surface, the POCD clearly supports agricultural activities. You're concerned as a commission about changing the regs and its implications on a very broad basis. That if it perhaps was slightly written, we'll use the term a little tighter, that you could potentially come to the conclusion that it is consistent with the POCD versus making a negative decision tonight.
Right.
I like that without
I don't
being
wanna
too
make it- I
specific as to how it
personally
should be
wouldn't do
changed. Without us
Yeah, I don't wanna
rewriting
make
it,
a
saying,
negative,
We like
because
the
I think unless.
concept, but it needs to be well
Well,
thought
would,
out.
Yeah,
would,
I
would
don't-
would we expect a rewrite to come back
Well,
that
that's
we
up
would
to them.
consider?
I think the staff you do not meet in December as a commission. Again, the zoning commission has scheduled a hearing for January 8th. We will be doing legal notices in late December. The applicant has the ability to revise their application. It's easier to do it prior public hearing notice, but they can do it throughout the process, so long as it doesn't, again, jeopardize how the text amendment was noticed. And it does give the applicant an opportunity to, they can listen to what you had to say, have a conversation with staff, and they get to decide as an applicant whether they're going to amend their application.
Yeah, they'll get the word, so.
And that would be done, I'm sorry, Jamie, explain it. So that would be done at the public hearing in January?
They could do that tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Literally, they could.
So they could do that with feedback from, okay.
If they were here this evening, they could, listen to what you have to say, revise it tomorrow, add 2 more sentences, another paragraph.
If they revise it, does it go back to zoning and another referral to us, or does it come straight to us?
Say that again, Alan?
Well, if they revise their language, does it have to go back to zoning to get back to us? Because the referral
Anything,
doesn't change.
if you made a motion to table it this evening, any revisions would come to
Straight
staff
to us.
and straight to you.
Okay, good, that slows that.
Does anyone else besides me have a little concern? We talked about subordination and the fact that it should be 25, however many acres need to be under farm production. But does 25 seem a little arbitrary? I mean,
Well, what number is it?
Right.
good point, but I
A
mean,
number that is.
usually,
You know?
there's some reason other
That'd
than,
be-
oh, that's the size of my farm, and most of the other farms don't qualify, so.
Right, so I put,
Yeah.
it disqualifies them from competing with me.
Yeah,
Right,
that worries
that was
me a
my
little bit.
point.
Right, I
at the
think you said
beginning.
that.
Who does this lock out?
Right.
Yeah.
Again, one of the keys is if you had a 5-acre orchard, can you support a bakery? If you had a
According to this, no.
5-acre farm, can you support a bakery, or is what is subordinate?
5 acres
What is
of
the-
zucchini
With
can make a
that
lot of
size.
And
zucchini.
the key is not necessarily lot size, it's agricultural production. Like, Holly and I have talked about backyard tomatoes, which is a production, it's a modern industrial production of tomatoes in greenhouses in Maine. And they do it hydroponically, vertically. So farming's changed. And it's about production and yield, maybe not necessarily about acreage. I think their attempt was to have a discussion about scalability, that if you had 5 acres and you had a small tomato patch on that 5 acres, you probably don't have enough to have a bakery to consider it to be subordinate. So they threw a number out of 25. And I think if you had 25 acres in vegetable or orchard production, someone say you have a viable farm that looks like a farm, there's probably a farm stand associated with it if you're 25 acres in production. And a component of that farm stand is a bakery. And everything's subordinate to the primary use of the property, which is agriculture or farming. So there's a hierarchy to that.
I get it.
Can you have an ice cream shop in a residential zone without a dairy farm?
Shouldn't.
So that's, someone would say, well, if you had a dairy farm or a farm and you did artisan cheeses, yeah, a retail store as part of the production of your artisan cheeses probably makes sense. But define a farm. Is it a goat? You're the, Cato Corner in Colchester, Connecticut, has a substantial artisan cheese production facility on their site, but I believe they produce all of their milk internally.
That's like Grand Pea. Yeah, Sweet Pea. Yeah, where they do.
But most ice cream shops send their milk out, they get basically vanilla back, and then they make ice cream from that base mix.
Yeah, I don't know how big.
So again, if tonight, I think if you were considering a negative referral based on the merits of what's before you, I would make a recommendation that you table it, give the applicant an opportunity to understand your dilemma,
Yeah, I
we'd-
want
and
more
potentially
specifics.
address that.
Yeah, I
think we'd like to find it consistent, but not so risky.
Yeah.
So-
Trying to find the minutes when we last discussed this.
We didn't discuss this.
Well, we
though.
didn't discuss this specifically.
No, but it was similar.
Maybe this-
Turning
was
it
it
into an event.
Late
place,
spring,
like-
Bill?
Yeah, but did we,
Nobody was-
it was September of 2016.
Really? Wow.
I don't remember even how that wrapped up.
We didn't,
We didn't, it
we
was a
said
negative
no, it was a
referral.
negative referral, yeah.
But did we say anything about the commercial kitchen?
No, yes, there was,
Yes.
there were concerns about the commercial kitchen, but I don't remember specifically what.
The
Do you?
event facility.
We were concerned also
It was-
also about noise and frequency and.
Well, that
how
was
this
it. I don't think
impacts
we
and-
had concern necessarily about the kitchen, but
Yeah,
it
not
was.
the kitchen
Could you have a
itself.
wedding every day of the week because the way,
Recollection was scalability
yeah,
and the activity being subordinate to the farm.
right. And that there was concern that the way it was written, they could do it, it was the amount, the way that was worded, we were concerned that it was more of a party destination than a farm.
So if I might ask a question here, Mr. Rabbit, why aren't they just going for a special exemption?
Right.
Special exempt.
Exception?
Yeah.
Yeah, they could.
Oh, a special exception that says anything not on the, allowed in the regulation, apply for a special exception, and maybe it'll get approved?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Under what standard would the zoning commission be able to approve that?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, that would be difficult.
I'm not on the zoning commission. It just seems to me that this is ripe for a special exception, excuse me. But I'm not on the zoning commission, so.
There is a recent case out there that cautions commissions from deviating from the written words of their regulations in the form of waivers, or we'll call it alternative permitting processes. To have a specific list of permitted uses, to have a specific list of prohibited uses, and then offer someone a permitting process that lets you do something
It's prohibited.
that isn't clearly permitted, isn't clearly, may not be one of those clearly prohibited uses, but it's in that very gray area. So I do commend them for trying to go the text amendment route, so it's clear. My discussions with Mr. Epstein, they're not trying to hide or disguise anything. Their ultimate goal is to diversify the farm for financial success, and it's not necessarily financial gain, it's financial viability of an agricultural activity through diversification at some appropriate scale.
So
What
tightening
they
it up doesn't
potentially,
jeopardize.
again, this gets passed, it exists in the zoning regulation, then someone applies for a permit. In the scenario of the property that's associated with the applicant, it may be perfectly appropriate there. What you're concerned about is this regulation exists for the entire community.
Okay.
And would it be appropriate somewhere else? So are there enough provisions in the proposed amendment that you're comfortable with?
And then it's subordinate, that it makes
And
sense
that's
for, yeah,
clearly
absolutely.
So
Yep.
if
So
we
table, I
wanted
think we
to
agree.
have a sort of this encouraging, where we're not rejecting it, we're asking them to tighten it up, how would we word that motion?
You would potentially, if you wanted to, you could just table it this evening.
It'll,
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
But what would be the purpose of tabling it?
for you to potentially see revised language?
Based on
Your
correspondence?
Your discussion this evening? That is.
I don't think we concluded anything.
No, but I think your discussion was potentially beneficial to the applicant,
But they're not here.
but it's being recorded, minutes, the tape will be available, and SCTV is recording the meeting this evening. Thank
Okay.
you.
Well, I'm sitting here, I'm not sure what our concerns are. I'm not sure someone watching the recording can deduce it. What are our concerns? I'll tell you my concern. My concern is that a commercial bakery, to me, is not an accessory use for a farm. Simple as that.
any farm.
Yeah. And I fully, understand the potential of the income from this other activity making the farm viable.
So even if a farm sells baked goods, what if it was, all right, let's look at all the boundary conditions. Let's say it was Aunt Nelica making 3 apple pies a day. The kids picked the apples from and sold them on the road stand. Would we not want that? Would
No,
we-
that to me,
He's
where the
talking-
apples coming from the orchard on the farm,
Okay.
perfect flow.
Okay, but that's a bakery, that's an example where a baking operation would be part of the
Yep,
farm.
yep. In that case, using produce from the farm.
I think
Okay,
that's
so you're
what we're
saying, you're
saying.
getting back to the subordinate issue,
Yes.
not bakeries don't belong on farms. Okay,
right,
that's why I
if they're
just want to
selling
make sure.
cranberry bread, neither the cranberries came from the farm.
Right.
I think that's what everyone agrees, Bill.
Like weeds.
I think that's what everyone was saying.
And I think we're in agreement. Could we like take a vote on several topics?
Well, I
so
think,
that they know what
Bill,
we mean?
Bill, to your point, I agree with you. I think as long as, and to use the word subordinate, because it's the best way to describe it, I think there has to be some tie to the produce that they're growing on the property. I don't have issue per se with having a 400 square foot kitchen if you're baking apple pies and you have apples in your orchard, if you're making tomatoes, or whatever it is you grow
Well,
tomatoes.
how about flatbread pizzas because you have tomatoes? I mean,
Well,
they
that's-
really
No,
get
but they're specifically saying bread and, baked goods
And
or whatever, pies or whatever. But I think it has to be tied to the farming that's doing on the land. So for me, it's a little too vague, and what I would want to see is language that says that it has to be supported. It just can't be anything, because they could be making chocolate chip cookies with nothing to do with the farm. We don't want that.
I mean, let's take it down to the different level. We all like different artisan-type breads, and I think this is where this is going. What if they grow or what if they bake sourdough bread? I don't think that's a wheat farm down there.
Right.
See what I'm saying? It's not subordinate, so you can't sell sourdough, but you can sell, apple crisp. See what I'm saying? It's just, this whole text amendment thing
Yeah.
bothers me.
Because if you're investing in all of the capital equipment to make your apple pie, and you just like now today you go to Rosedale Farms, you can buy zucchini bread, you can buy
Right.
all sorts of great things. God knows we buy them. You might want to say, well, I mean, let's make a cinnamon roll. We've got all this flour and bread and sugar here. I wouldn't want to disallow that either. So I think it takes a thought process. I'm a little worried about this
Right.
ad hoc nature of the whole thing.
I'd like to tighten it up, but thinking about the POCD, if we're encouraging agriculture, that includes keeping it economically viable. If they sold things made from their own production, but enhanced it with some other stuff, that doesn't bother me too much.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, not necessarily as a compromise, but as a discussion purpose, everybody's familiar with the fact the applicant has a winery. Is everybody familiar with farm winery regulations in Connecticut? Does anybody know the percentages of juice that has to be produced on the farm in order to have your farm winery license?
Very small.
I think it's small.
30%?
No, it's
No, it's
no.
less.
It used to
Very
be
small.
50, I believe 51. It's gone to 75 juice from outside the farm, 25 on the farm. So there's an instance where you have a viable agricultural activity, you have a vineyard, but a vineyard at a certain scale can't compete in a market where California goes from Maine to Maryland. And you can say that's all California product, but in Connecticut, you have to grow your grapes from Connecticut, and in some instances, you have to grow them from the farm. So Connecticut, for agricultural purposes, has changed the definition of the amount of juice you need to put into your farm winery grown on site. So I think the discussion you could look at that farm winery language or industry, and to Robert's kind of discussion that, is it accessory or is it commercial? But if a certain proportionality of what is going into your bakery is grown on the farm, it potentially could be subordinate. There's a Woodstock Orchards is in Woodstock, Connecticut, and they have a small bakery, and they bake apple pies, and they now do donuts and apple fritters and everything. But they don't have blueberries. In this discussion, could they do blueberry pies? Well, they have all the infrastructure to bake pies, and maybe it would be okay if 25% of their production was made from product on the farm and 75% of their production was produced on the farm from goods outside to kind of mirror the farm winery industry that still allows a viable agricultural, it still says Rosedale Farm on the Vintner for grapes, but again, a percentage of that is potentially grown off-site. If they do a reserve product, that has to be grown all from their product. 100% their grapes grown on property, and historically in Connecticut, on the property, Matt, not across the street from you. So if you had 10 acres of vineyard across the street, that was off-site. And that language has changed a little bit, so if you're, in proximity to the farm, you're allowed to count that as your Connecticut-grown farm grape, but you're still allowed to bring juice in. So I think the discussion is, if you have a viable farm and you're growing peaches, or you're growing zucchini, and you're doing zucchini bread, and you're doing peach pies, well, peaches come in at a different time of year than apples. So does the bakery only run in the spring? Or does it only run in August because you have blueberries? Or can it run in the fall when you have apples? And apples keep all winter. This farm doesn't happen to have apples. Peaches are a more less durable product. They're more susceptible to spoilage. But is there an opportunity with language to say, as long as a certain amount of proportionality of farm product is used in the production of that bakery, you're back to the question of subordinate, that you're not just a commercial bakery. You are, but you are subordinate to the farm because that farm produces product that goes into your bakery. It's not, the example used earlier, it's not a bakery, it's a horse farm.
But Jamie, are you proposing that if we table this, the applicant himself will be able to come up with all
The
these?
applicant has an opportunity potentially to modify the language. They also could choose not to, and your dilemma doesn't change a month from now.
Right.
Yeah, I
But it
think
at least
if
gives them the
there's a way for the applicant to get the feedback from our discussion.
Yep.
I think that, the key takeaways are a certain portion of the product needs to come from the ongoing activities of the farm. Okay? I'm not going to put any quantification to it, okay? But I think that's how I see the commission.
Do we
going.
expect the applicant to come up with the proportion? I mean, that sounds to me, again,
Well,
very
it's
ad
up to
hoc.
him to submit the
submit,
text
yeah.
amendment.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I know what Holly's saying. Say they come back and say, oh, we're going to use 1% of the farm product. What are we going to say to that?
Well, even if it's 15, is that good or bad? I mean, that's,
Right.
yeah, it worries
Well-
me. Also, when I first read this, I thought, wow, what a great idea, because just down the road, I could bicycle between the two, is Picking Patch, and I bet they've got lots of leftover fruit. And here would be a great way for farms to help each other out, to sell directly to the baker, who then gives him,
The
So
the
do you think
applicant's
you-
going to rewrite the text
But
amendment,
and
and he'll
again,
get feedback.
it's
from
subordinates and it's proportionality, because in a farm winery, you could not locate a vineyard or a production facility in a residential zone if you weren't growing grapes on the property, if you weren't a farm. You can't have a farm winery if you don't.
staff.
Rosedale couldn't exist if they didn't have grapes on the property that they used in the process.
Right.
I should say Rosedale Vineyard couldn't exist if they weren't growing grapes on the property, harvesting those grapes, producing juice, and doing it on the site. If they stopped growing grapes, they no longer are a farm winery. They are just a manufacturer in a residential zone. They lose the status of farm.
Yeah.
So I understand your discussion, and I think I can articulate that
Yeah.
to the applicant.
The other thing.
And it's their choice whether they want to make revisions.
With the text amendments, I know we have to take every application one at a time. But if we gave a positive referral for this and the comments were something like, oh, it's going to help the economic viability of the farm, what's to stop someone from coming in next week and say, I think I want to sell wooden pallets because I can make money at that and it's going to help my farm.
And I have hardwood on my property,
No hardwood.
no hardwood.
Okay, totally unrelated, no subordination.
Okay,
all right?
just
So,
ask.
yeah.
Yeah, I think
That'd be a
that's,
good one.
I think that's apples and oranges. I think, I think that this is specifically because they want to use some of their produce.
I don't think so, Aaron.
I don't think so either.
I don't agree. I
They may want to
think,
just get vertical integration on the big products they already sell, most of which do not use the products of the farm. Again, I don't have heartburn with that.
Yeah, I don't know
guess
this,
what the
I don't know
thing
the
I was trying to say is
circumstances of
that
the other
I
products.
agree, it should
Yeah.
be subordinate, but we might even want to talk about two different percentages if, one percentage of product from the farm, or again, if you're making some zucchini and you've got some peaches, but just down the road, a person
Let's
in
not
the
make
same
it too
region.
complicated.
Yeah, that's
Well, again,
How far
it
is
comes.
too far away?
Right, that's what I
There's
mean.
no way
If-
for
I
us
think
to
This is
police
why
that.
the ad hocness bothers me, because if we were to do this with, we have an action item in the POCD that we should be coming up with some ideas to help farms, and we really thought this through and got the input of a lot of farmers, we'd probably have a real good text amendment that helped out a lot of people and didn't have unintended consequences.
well, Bill, to
I'm worried
your,
about the unintended
to your point,
consequences.
if it is what you think it is, where they just want to do a bakery, then let them come back with a change, and
That
if they
satisfies.
truly, that satisfies it, because if they truly want to use the products on the farm, then they'll do it. If they don't
It's
come
not
back, then
just
that
what
tells
they
us
wanna
something,
do.
right? That's more data for us to make a decision, because I agree, I don't want them just to put up a bakery. I would want to see that it is subordinate, and that they're using some of that produce to make zucchini bread or pies or whatever, peach cobbler, whatever that is.
Cornbread.
It shouldn't be the intent of them as farmers to put up a commercial bakery for
It's
their.
not just their intent, it's the intent of the guy 10 years from now, 15.
Correct,
Yeah.
but it's their intent and that too, Alan, that's a good point.
That's why we need language
Right.
that,
So I say, let
Satisfied.
them come back, see if they're willing to
up to
rewrite
them
it.
to
If they're
come up with
not,
language.
I think that's a telling sign, and then we can make a decision based on the fact that they didn't come back and make any adjustments.
Jamie, have enough to
oh yeah.
fuel the conversation?
He had enough a while ago.
Okay, good.
It
Thank
was a
you.
good
Thank you.
discussion.
Yep, that's good. We certainly don't want to, limit anyone's potential to achieve, but we have to do it in an intelligent
Well, we don't want
manner.
to open the floodgates to potential pop-ups all over town.
Okay, let's go on to the general commission business. We don't need a motion or anything. This issue is tabled till next meeting.
Okay. So you won't be able to vote.
So we have no meeting in December?
No, because of the way the holidays fall.
2 holidays,
Not even the second Tuesday?
Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, so we're not meeting at all in December?
That's right.
Okay.
So this will be the
Merry
last.
Christmas and
yeah.
Happy New Year, all you, everyone.
All right.
General Commission business. The Capital Region, what is it? Capital Region Commission of Governments or something like that?
Capital Region Council of Governments.
Council of Governments. Regional Planning Commission, also called the RPC. It will be looking for appointments from each member town for the calendar year of 2018. This is an appointment that I've gladly accepted from the commission for the past 2 years, I believe. I would be more than happy to fill that appointment again if the commission sees fit. I don't think it doesn't have to be the chairman of the commission. It can be, any member.
Where do they meet?
Generally in West Hartford Town Hall on Thursday nights at 7 o'clock every other month with no meetings in the summer.
And you'd like to do it?
I would like to do it.
I move that we'll do it.
Well, are you interested, Alan? Is that what you're asking?
I would be interested if Bill didn't want it, but Bill's got a history with him.
Okay.
And he's good at it, so.
Gonna need an alternate.
And I'm the wild card, you never know, I might
Yeah, I'm
not
gonna
be.
need an
You're gonna need an
alternate.
alternate, because
Alternate
your
would be
alternate's
fine.
retiring.
What was it? Oh, because the other.
I'd be happy to be an alternate
Good.
for you.
January 18th.
We're gonna
First
miss
meeting.
you.
You're not gonna
I'm
be
not
there.
available.
Boy, did I just get
So
hold.
Jamie, did you receive the application or the request from CROG?
I believe we did.
Jumped right out of the water on that.
I know,
one.
Alan.
So I'd be more than happy to, okay, are you guys
We're good.
We're good.
good for
Go
that?
for it.
Okay, want to make a motion or anything, or is it?
I believe Holly was.
Holly did, I'll
Oh,
second
yeah,
that
I
motion.
move that Bill do it.
Alan
Ellen B is alternate.
I'll
and Ellen
second
B
it.
is
So
alternate.
Bob seconded.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarity, Holly moved to recommend the appointment of William Rice to the Capital Region Council of Governments, Regional Planning Commission. That was
Bob
seconded
seconded.
by.
Second it.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott.
All in favor of the motion? Please
Well,
say
I'm
aye.
deeply in
Aye.
favor.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
Do we need a motion to your appointment for the alternate, or are you just going to let that?
Does the application look for an alternate?
Ultimately, they do, but it,
Remember they wanted consistency, Bill?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'll move to have, to appoint Alan Rice as alternate to the
Alan Needham.
Capital
Alan
Region. What?
Alan Needham.
Alan Needham, what did I say? Alan Rice?
Yeah,
You know why? I used to work with a guy named Alan Rice. The combination. To Alan Needham as alternate to the Capital Region Council of Governments,
Regional plan.
Regional Planning
Planning
Commission.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Alan, and thank you, commissioners. One other thing that Jamie and I kind of discussed for the agenda this week, for this meeting, was the election of officers. And you guys remember last year?
Well,
2 years ago.
for you,
Was it 2 years ago or last?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. It happened before Holly and I got on the
Elections
board.
can be called anytime.
Yes.
Anytime you're looking
Let's
for a
wait till the
change or you
newbies
want
come
to test it.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm not clear if you need to run again unless people want to have an election for your post.
Let's check the
I
bylaws.
think what the bylaws say that elections have to be noticed in two
And it can be, yeah.
two
I
agendas.
think it
There wasn't a
needs
notice
to,
anyway.
it needs to be, no, I wouldn't suggest we do it tonight.
Can't do it tonight.
Wait,
It's gotta be in two, it had to be on, wow, it wouldn't happen until
January.
end of January.
You mean, so the last time that they
They did it
purposely
before we
excluded the newbies? What,
Yep.
they had to do it in 2 meetings to accomplish it? Just throwing
me.
it out there.
The election of officers shall be noticed in 2 successive agendas
So that would be-
prior to the election.
Well, I read that as first meeting in January, but you could do it the second meeting in January because the agenda precedes the meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
So the bylaws say, the commission shall elect a chairman and a secretary from its regular members
Right.
to serve at the pleasure of the commission. The affirmative vote of at least 4 members shall be required to elect a chairman and a secretary.
But I'm not sure you have to, well, I'm not sure.
It doesn't say when you have to do it.
But we'd have to do secretary because
You have to do a secretary.
you have to do a
have a
secretary.
I'm sure we
Vacancy and
have to
secretary.
actually vote on a chairman, although it doesn't matter probably, but
Good point, yeah. Should we say that we intend to elect a secretary next
Well,
time?
it has to be noticed who it is for 2, right?
You have to notice elections.
Right.
You don't,
Oh,
not
you
have
have
to
to
notice
Just
the
notice there's
slate.
going to be an election.
Right.
All
And
right.
you could notice it for your January meeting,
Yeah, let's do that.
election.
both January meeting.
election of planning commission secretary.
Secretary.
That's your, we'll
Well,
say your
let's just
open
leave it
position.
for officers.
Okay.
I'll leave it up to the board to make nominations,
That's right, we can
okay?
It's a good idea
change
to
your
do
mind,
both.
that's good.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, so please have that show up on the next agenda, Jamie, please. Does it need to be noticed, like in the newspaper and everything? Okay, just via the agenda?
That's in time.
So it'll be on your 2 January meeting.
Good catch, Alan. Knowing the bylaws.
Okay, very
He's a
good.
smart guy.
So
He is a smart
that wasn't exactly on the agenda, but it was something I wanted to get a little heads up.
Can I say something? I just want to say goodbye to Bob.
I
That
know.
I've enjoyed sitting next to you these last 2 years, and thank you so much, because it's been a real pleasure serving with you. So
Thanks.
Right.
good luck in your future endeavors.
So, yeah, let's just go through the roster a little bit. So, Bob, thank you very much.
You're
Everything Aaron said, I just repeat it. So, thank you.
You're gonna come back and visit on Tuesday
I'll miss it out there. I'm gonna have to.
Heckle.
Well, it was because of you I ran.
Well,
I
good.
met you on the
There you
Economic
go.
Development Task
So
Force.
that 6 years is all worth it then, right?
So, Ron LaCandro was up for election, did not run.
Yep.
Alan, congratulations on your reelection.
Yeah, congratulations.
Okay. Elizabeth, Mark Drake was up for,
No, he was not.
No, he was
He was
not.
not?
He didn't run.
Nope.
He resigned.
The only candidates
Resigned?
were, can make it easy for you, was myself and Mr. Blumey out here,
but we had an alternate.
and
Yeah.
Rich Cortez,
Yeah, but
Yeah.
who's
who
he?
ran unopposed.
Okay, so who does he
Who does he
replace?
replace?
He was an
That was an
alternate.
alternate.
He's an alternate.
Position.
Well,
Mark-
not
Mark-
Elizabeth,
No.
it would be,
It was Mark. Mark chose not
resigned, I
to,
think.
not to.
He didn't run.
Right.
all right, so you've got Rich in there,
Yep, so we have, okay, so for regular members, we'll have Holly,
yep,
Mr. Dave Blumey,
Ron's?
Yep.
who's in the audience tonight,
yeah,
Aaron,
yeah.
and Alan, Bill, and Craig McCormick,
Craig McCormick, right.
okay? And the new alternate member will be
Rich Cortez.
a returning alternate member,
Yeah.
Rich Cortez.
Bill, he didn't replace Gary, huh? Because I thought Mark, honestly.
You know,
I
I've
thought-
got a list of
No, it was
term
Ron,
limits.
I thought Ron ran as an alternate. And then when Kevin Prell resigned, he was appointed to Kevin's position
Yep.
and said he would
that's
have to
right.
run again in 2 years, even
Right.
though he had a four.
he
so-
didn't.
But he,
Chose
right.
not to.
So, right, but what I'm saying is Mark, they appointed him to take Ron's alternate, which was, he was elected 2 years ago. So I'm wondering if it was Gary's position that,
I can find out. It's on the town website whose terms expire. when.
all right, I think it's Gary's. I
No,
don't,
I'm pretty sure it's Mark, because I asked him if he wanted to run again.
oh,
I
okay.
think
said
it's
no.
Mark, but
Yep.
Yep.
it's
Okay.
easy to find out.
So Dave, welcome aboard. Don't forget that you need to go to the town clerk and get sworn in. Okay? Were those,
Or come on the
December
4th.
on the 4th, it's the group one?
At the Enos,
Yeah, you can do it
6
either
p.m.
way,
at Eno.
and you don't forget your
Ethics,
conflict of,
yeah.
okay,
Good.
and a case of beer for the chairman. Don't forget that.
And the rest of the board.
No gifts, Dave, please.
No, please don't.
Don't get me tied up in
Bad
We'll
that.
all be in jail.
So the next meeting, unless there's a special meeting, which I don't foresee, will be January 18th. Which I'm not going to be there. Oh, it's okay, because
not
that's
the
going to be the first
Wait,
note.
no,
Oh,
No,
it's
January
the
ninth.
7th. It's the-
I'm thinking regional planning,
January 9th.
January 9th. I'll be here. Good. Any other,
Jamie, any idea of when we'll get our new brand spanking new piece?
We are in the process of reviewing a digital proof from the printer. I have an email out to Glenn regarding some of the clarity of the photos and the resolution of those and whether they can be improved or not. They're doing a true digital print, as close as they can get to offset printing. So I talked to Bill about it'll be more of the texture and thickness of the community design guidelines. It'll look less like a Xerox copy of something.
Yeah.
And the company responsible for that had a little concern about the resolution of some of the photographs. And I want to say they're being very technical with regards to the review, that what we may think of not being blurry, they view as blurry. So they just want to make sure that we're aware that if that is the print original we are providing them, that in their view, the clarity that they are used to producing may be slightly compromised, but on a digital image on the webpage, you will not notice a difference. And also in print, you potentially may not notice a difference, but they would.
Who are you using? Who's your
Our scene printing out of Brooklyn, Connecticut. There aren't that many true printers. There are printers who do, in essence, copies. But for someone to do a true traditional digital print, there are
Will it look like
limited
the
numbers.
draft?
And also, they were very competitive with regards to their prices. And in the scheme of things, we're getting 50 additional prices, 50 additional copies for a comparable price to other bids.
Oh, great.
Will it look like the draft? Like,
Pretty close. I think
Yeah,
the
yeah,
the
way
bind-
this
the binding's gonna be a
the
little
binding-
different.
The binding's a traditional wire spiral.
oh, okay,
The cover is 130 weight cover stock, so it
A
is
little thicker than this.
maybe double the thickness of
Okay.
that cover. The
Like
back
similar
cover
to that.
Almost cardboard.
has 165 pound weight for cover stock, so that's even thicker than the front cover.
okay.
And then the paperweight is, I think, 110 for regular stock. We did insert 5 tabs. They won't have a tab on the outside, but we inserted 5 actually tab pages on a thicker cover stock. So as you're flipping through the document, if you flipped, you will get to that thicker page and know it's a section divider.
Okay.
But it wasn't cost effective to do the actual
Tab itself.
little out, because that's got to be cut
Yeah,
to meet the paper weight and style we were looking for. So
cool.
once I release that, which I'm hoping to potentially do later this week, if not early next week, it's a 2 to 3 week time frame. So I may have a wonderful gift for you during the holidays.
Okay, look forward to it.
You know who should, every real estate office in town ought to have a few of these
We're,
copies.
I am doing,
It's
we
a
talked
town
originally about
seller.
doing 100 copies.
What's on
We
the
chose from a budget perspective to do 100. Once this proposal came in, I was able to do 150 copies. Again, so long as there are no glitches in the digital
Yeah.
review of that proof. But we will provide 150 copies. 80 to 90 are gonna slip through our hands very quickly between distributions to the selectmen,
I was gonna ask, okay.
to the planning commission, zoning commission, conservation commission.
Yeah.
Library, EDC, internally to staff. So, when we're done, we may have 50 or 60 left that need to last us 10 years without having to go back out to print.
And as Aaron and I can attest, it's rough when you don't get one.
We'll make sure you get one this time, Holly. Don't worry. Okay, any correspondence or anything, Jamie? Any applications on the
Nothing new to
horizon?
add. Not for planning in the foreseeable future. There may be one, maybe beginning of next year. That was being contemplated as a new road in town, but may be modified to be a few shared driveways versus a new road infrastructure that the town would have to maintain.
When do we get to see what you submitted to the Board of Selectmen, which I think is pretty good?
For design
Guide.
guidelines,
Yeah, well, no, the guide to people applying for permits, which
we can send that out to you electronically in the next few days.
That's a really nice thing, by the way. If you're a homeowner and you want to know who you have to see and what you have to do, or anybody really, it's very clear,
Good.
very nice.
Wasn't aware that was going on. Good job, Jamie.
Thank you.
Oh,
Well,
very good,
yeah,
yeah.
We, again, Melissa Appleby out of the administrator office did a yeoman's job with assisting our department, as well as the other departments. We had engineering take a look at it, building, our zoning team, Public Works, WPCA, as well as the fire marshal. All had a hand in reviewing our draft document. And again, it's not a static document. If you see revisions or have suggestions, we can look at modifying that document.
Okay, Jamie, maybe for the first meeting, we should probably have a little bit of introduction to the process for the new members. I always like to have at least 3 documents in everyone's possession: POCD, subdivision regulations, and the bylaws.
Yep.
That's a starting point, and then,
And do you have a condensed version of
We didn't get the bylaw.
The
You can get
statute.
them online. That's where I got
We
it.
Yeah.
have supplied
Going
some
3 or 4
light
pages.
Yeah.
reading material for our new full-time member, being, Chapter 124, Chapter 126. The land use guide that I've given you as your cheat sheet for those sections, as well as policies and procedures for the commission, as they relate to case law and statute. We will be sending those out as we get everybody's contact information.
Excellent, good.
We will be putting, Bill, to your point, we will be putting packets together for the new
Awesome.
members.
Great. Well, Commissioners, it was a busy year, you know.
It was.
I look back, we had a bunch of canceled meetings later on in the year, but, we spent a lot of time in the POCD and a couple other applications, so.
It was busy.
Great job.
Yeah, great job. And
Looking forward to working with everybody again next year and the new members, too.
and good job guiding us. You did a great
thank
job
you.
at the hearings and,
Great.
no, we did a lot of good work, I agree.
Well, we learn every time.
And great staff.
Yes.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
So now that we're done patting ourselves on the back, I make a motion to adjourn.
I second that.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned.